Hey, you think I don't know about YouTube? Well, I do. With today's story, you laugh, you learn, and you remember where you come from and recognize where you are going. The elders say, what the old sees while sitting, a young cannot see even from the top of a tree. So come now, listen well and let the story speak to your spirit.
In the far interior of Liberia, where the red earth of Lofa County darkened after rain and the forest breathed like a living elder, there lay the village of Kpanyah. It rested between slow hills and a bend of the Makona tributary, a place where rice paddy shimmered like broken mirrors and oil palms stood in solemn rows like watchers who never slept. The people of Kpanyah lived by the calendar of seasons and the calendar of ancestors, measuring time not only by moons and harvests, but by remembered footsteps, by the rise and fall of lineages, by the wisdom carried in proverbs that moved from mouth to ear like sacred fire. At the heart of the village stood a well older than memory. It was ringed with stones smoothed by centuries of hands, and a fig tree leaned over it, its roots clutching the earth as if holding the well in place. This well had a name that was never spoken lightly, the well where no one looks down. Children were taught early to draw water with their eyes lifted toward the sky. Women hummed old melodies while lowering their buckets, careful to keep their gaze soft and distant. Men poured libation nearby before journeys, but never peered into its mouth. The elders said the well was deep enough to hold the past and the future together, and that it returned the gaze of anyone bold enough to stare into it. Kpanyah belonged mostly to the Bele people, farmers and storytellers, known for patience and quiet strength. Their culture honored restraint, for they believed that wisdom arrived like rain, never forced, always waited for. Masks carved from silk cotton wood were kept in shaded houses, brought out only when the village needed to remember who it was. Drums spoke during festivals, and their rhythms curled into the forest, waking spirits that had slept since the beginning of paths. Songs moved like rivers, never sung the same way twice, for the singers believed repetition without reflection invited misfortune. The well had always been part of this rhythm, a steady silence amid sound. It fed the village during droughts when other streams thinned into lines of stone. It never ran dry, and no one remembered digging it. Some said it rose on its own the night the ancestors chose this land. Others said it fell from the sky, a wound in the earth that learned to give water instead of blood. Whatever its origin, it shaped the habits of the people. It taught them to trust without demanding to see everything. It taught them that some depths fed life only if left unmeasured. Among the people of Kpanyah lived a young man named Tambakole, born during a season when the rain came late and the elders worried. His mother labored through a night of thunder, and the first sound he heard was the drum calling dawn. Tamba grew into a tall and restless youth, quick with his hands and quicker with his thoughts. He respected the elders, but carried questions like stones in his chest. While others accepted the ways of Kpanyah as fixed, Tamba felt the pull of beyond, the ache of horizons hidden by forest and rule. He was known for his skill at weaving fish traps and for a temper that flared like dry grass. He could be generous one moment and distant the next. He listened to stories, but always wanted their ending sooner. In the evenings, while elders spoke in slow circles, Tamba watched the fire and imagined what lay beyond its light. He wondered about the well more than anyone else, not because he doubted its power, but because he wished to understand it fully, to see the bottom and name what lived there. To him, not knowing felt like hunger. The elders noticed his restlessness. They spoke of it in proverbs that drifted toward him like smoke. A goat that tugs its rope forgets the strength of the post. A river that rushes forgets the stones that keep it singing. Tamba nodded when such wisdom passed his way, but his heart beat faster each time he stood near the well. The air around it felt heavier, cooler, as if the world leaned inward there. He felt watched, not by eyes, but by memory itself. The year the story turned was a year of strange signs. The Harmattan wind came early, bringing dust that dimmed the sun at noon. Birds gathered in unusual numbers near the well, silent and still. At night, the fig tree leaves whispered without wind. A sickness touched the village goats, and a child sleepwalked to the edge of the forest before being found at dawn, unharmed but changed, speaking in riddles that tasted of water and stone. The elders increased their offerings. Palm wine soaked the ground near the well. Rice flour traced symbols older than words. Songs rose in the evenings, low and secular, asking for balance. The well answered by continuing to give clear water, cool and sweet, but its silence deepened. No echo returned when stones were dropped near its rim. It swallowed sound as easily as thirst. Tamba felt the pull grow stronger. He began to dream of water that reflected not faces, but moments. In his dreams, he saw himself as a child, then as an old man, then as something in between that had no name. He woke with sweat and a certainty that the well held something meant for him. He told no one, for he knew the answer would be patience and prayer. He wanted action. One afternoon, when the village gathered for a communal farm clearing, Tamba lingered behind. The sun stood high, and cicadas stitched the air with sound. He walked to the well alone. The fig tree shade wrapped him like a cloak. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. He lowered the bucket slowly, listening to the rope slide against stone. When it hit water, the sound felt close and far at once. He pulled the bucket up, but instead of lifting it away, he leaned forward. The old warning pulsed in his mind, but so did a louder call, a promise of knowing. He bent further until the sky vanished from his vision and only darkness remained. For the first time in the memory of Kpanyah, someone looked down into the well. What he saw was not water, but a depth alive with moving shadow. Images surfaced like fish. He saw the founding of Kpanyah, the first fire lit, the first child named. He saw famine and feast, love and betrayal. He saw his own mother as a girl laughing by the river. He saw a path leading out of the forest toward the coast, toward ships and salt wind. The well showed without judgment, without order, everything at once. The weight of it pressed into him. Then the well looked back.
Tamba felt a presence rise, not a body, but a knowing, ancient and patient. It asked without words what he sought. His answer formed not in speech, but in desire. He wanted certainty. He wanted control over the shape of his life. He wanted to step beyond the slow turning of tradition and claim his own depth. The well accepted his answer. When Tamba pulled back, the world seemed thinner, like a drum skin stretched too tight. He noticed details that had never mattered before: the tremble in leaves, the pulse beneath stone. He walked back to the village carrying the bucket, but the water inside shimmered with a faint inner light. He poured it into a calabash and no one noticed, for the village was loud with work and song. From that day, Tamba changed. He spoke less but saw more. He predicted rain before clouds gathered. He found lost goats without searching. People began to seek his advice quietly. He never spoke of the well, but the well spoke through him in ways he did not yet understand. His temper cooled, replaced by a confidence that felt like stone. He began to believe the depth he had seen belonged to him now. The elders sensed the shift. They felt it in the way the drums sounded duller, in the way children paused mid-play to watch Tamba pass. The well continued to give water, but some said it tasted heavier. A few complained of dreams that left them tired. The fig tree dropped leaves even in season, and its roots seemed to creep closer to the village paths.
Power gathered around Tamba like heat. He began to challenge old decisions, suggesting new ways, faster ways. Some listened eagerly, tired of waiting on slow cycles. Others felt a tightening in their chests. The village stood at a quiet divide, one foot in patience, one in ambition. The true cost revealed itself during the harvest festival. The masks were brought out, their carved faces painted with white clay and charcoal. Drums called the ancestors near, and dancers moved in patterns that stitched past and present together. Tamba stood at the edge, watching with a sense of distance, as if the rhythm no longer belonged to him. As the night deepened, the air shifted. The well began to hum. A low vibration felt more than heard. The fig tree shuddered. The drums faltered. From the well rose a mist that crept along the ground, touching feet and ankles. Vision spread like fire. People saw their regrets, their unspoken envies, their buried griefs. Some wept, some laughed without joy. The boundary the elders had guarded through generations thinned like old cloth. Tamba felt the pull again, stronger than before. The well demanded balance. It had shown him everything, and in return, it sought to be seen fully. It sought acknowledgement not as a tool, but as a being. The well was not just water, it was witness, it was memory, it was hunger that fed on attention.
The elders understood then what had happened. A depth looked into creates a depth that looks back. They gathered their strength, calling on old rituals meant for times when the world tilted. They sang songs older than the village, songs that carried warnings and forgiveness together. They knew the cost would be great. Tamba stepped forward, drawn by the hum. He realized in that moment that the certainty he had wanted was a cage. The visions overwhelmed him, showing futures where Kpanyah fractured, where knowledge without patience burned fields and hearts alike. He saw himself alone, powerful and empty. For the first time, fear rooted him to the ground. The well surged, mist rising like breath. The fig tree cracked, one great branch falling into the clearing. The village trembled on the edge of forgetting itself. Tamba understood then the lesson that had lived in silence. Some depth sustained only when respected from afar. To measure everything is to drain it of mystery, and without mystery, wisdom starves. In a moment of clarity, born of terror and love, Tamba made a choice not taught by ambition. He stepped toward the well, not to look, but to listen. He offered himself not as master, but as bridge.
He lowered the bucket one last time and poured its contents back into the well, returning what had been taken. The act tore through him. Memories surged and then settled. The light faded from the water. The well quieted. The mist sank back into stone. The fig tree stilled, though its fallen branch remained as a scar. The drums found their rhythm again, slow and grounding. The elders felt the balance return, but they knew a price had been paid. Tamba collapsed beside the well, alive but changed. His eyes no longer searched the horizon. They rested on the ground, on the people around him. He had lost the sharp edge of foresight, the easy certainty. In its place grew a deeper patience, a humility carved by fear and understanding. He would never again hunger to see every depth. The village tended to its wounds. They mourned what had been shaken loose and honored what remained. The elders reinforced the old teaching, not as rule, but as story, reminding each generation why some knowledge arrives only when invited by time. The well returned to silence, giving water without shimmer. The fig tree healed slowly, its scar becoming a place where children sat to hear stories. Tamba lived on as a farmer and teacher, speaking rarely of the night the world leaned too far. When he did teach, he taught through action, through waiting, through the careful passing of knowledge that respected the listener. He married, raised children, and aged into a man whose presence calmed rather than commanded. The village healed around him. Years later, when new children asked why no one looked down into the well, the answer came not as warning, but as wisdom woven into story. They were told of a time when seeing too much nearly broke the song of the village. They were taught that trust is also a form of sight and restraint a form of courage. They learned that mystery is not absence, but shelter. And so the well remained, deep and unseen, holding the layered memory of Kpanyah. It reflected the sky only when the sky wished to be known. The lesson settled into the bones of the people, like a proverb that needed no words. Some depths are meant to feed life quietly. Some truths grow strongest when no one looks down.
My dear ones, this is where our story ends for now. But tell me, what did your heart feel as you listened? Share your thoughts in the comment, You know Grandma loves to hear from you. And don't forget, press that subscribe button, like the story, and ring the little bell so that every time I come back here, you will be the first to join me. Until then, may your paths be safe, fruitful, and peaceful. Remember, keep your heart warm, your spirit curious and kind.